I don't know about you, but I'd rather watch paint dry than another Chime of Conflict montage or God Seeker build video. Deepwoken as of today has been out for 3 years, believe it or not. The game at some point definitely changed though. The community has become far worse than it once was. There have been some questionable balancing changes.
領域展開反抗を上げて
But throughout all of that, there's still a soft spot for it in my heart. When Deepwoken released, it was like nothing the Roblox platform had ever seen before, and was one of few games that lived up to the quality you'd expect of a paid game. It had a unique progression system which punished you heavily for dying, but rewarded you in the sense that you learned more about the world you were in. On release, it was an incredibly unbalanced game, but it had a charm to it like no other on the platform. Waking up in a world with no real instructions and having you figure it out for yourself. The combat was straightforward, but took time to master, all the while being accompanied by an amazing soundtrack. That was the icing on the cake. I was in love with this game. It let me be creative with my builds. It allowed me to explore a massive world that really made me feel involved. To this day, some of my fondest memories have come from the earliest days of Deepwoken.
When Deepwoken released in December 2021, I played more than 12 hours a day for at least 2 weeks, just exploring and figuring out the combat with some of my friends. I was really striving to master the combat back then, just to be able to consistently beat my friends. But even after playing the game for months, I was still pretty bad at the combat. So I started watching other people play the game to see if I could learn anything new from them to help improve my own skill. And as a result, I found an entirely new aspect of the game.
I was never really a huge fan of Chime of Conflict, as I wasn't really too good at the game back then. I preferred watching videos by Agamatsu or Watashi Ruby, who showed how crazy some of the game's mechanics could get, with mantra size and some crazy mechanics. Or the Real Punchy's lore videos, which really broadened my horizon on how expansive and in-depth the game's world building was. It was a breath of fresh air to see what else you could do in the game, though eventually I grew bored of learning about the game. I had come to a point where I was relatively good at the game's combat. I had learned all there was. I felt there was nothing left for me to do. I felt like Deepwoken kept getting further and further away from what made, well, Deepwoken feel like Deepwoken. So that begs the question, what is Deepwoken? Well, for me, Deepwoken is about learning. It's about making new builds and improving at the game. It's waiting in anticipation for that next big content update. Deepwoken is the first time you did Trial of One, it's the first time you wipe, and it's also the first time you max a build. Deepwoken is not knowing how to play the game. The memories I cherish most from this game are the ones from when I had no idea what I was doing. They're from when the game was simple, and I suppose from when my life was simpler too. Because back then I didn't have anything to worry about. I didn't have work, and school was pretty much a joke. I didn't have to study to do well, I didn't have any goals I was working towards. Pretty much all of my free time was spent playing video games or watching television. I didn't have a plan for the future to worry about. Looking back, I realized I only really enjoyed playing Deepwoken because I had more time to spare. The amount of enjoyment I had with the game was equal to the time I spent playing it. As I got older, so did Deepwoken. Deepwoken has come so far from what it once was when I started playing it originally, but ever since verse 2, Deepwoken just hasn't been the same. We still have our weekly updates and dedicated developers, but it seems like a new unbalanced legendary weapon or crazy strong mantra slips through the cracks every week, further changing the game from what it once was. Until a moment of reflection that I've realized the only thing that hasn't changed about the game is its soundtrack. I can't remember the last time I played with the music on, simply because it's harder to fight other players with it enabled. But as soon as Naktigonis' OST starts playing, I start feeling as if I'm sent back to a time when the game was simpler, when my life was simpler. I don't know the first thing about music, nor about writing it, and I'm not going to pretend like I do, but there's just something about it. Maybe it's the wackiness of Cat Whisker, or the ethereal sounds of Whisperwind, or maybe it's not actually the music, because when I first heard these songs, they didn't impress me immediately, or blow me away, but the soundtrack is the only thing that hasn't changed since I first loaded up this game. These songs are truly the essence of the game. For a world so heavily based on the song, the soundtrack perfectly fits each and every area of the game. The music is what brings back my fondest memories of this game. It brings back Deepwoken. Looking back on some of my earliest footage of this game, I truly didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the first thing about build making, nor did I have the slightest idea that I would meet some friends that I still have to this day. I had no idea that I would make my single greatest build shortly before verse 2, and never be able to create a better one. I know that this game is just a bunch of zeros and ones, but it's truly become a part of my life. No matter what state the game is in, it's still something that I'll hold deep in my heart. Deepwoken the game is changing every week. The only thing that hasn't changed since its release is the music. I can be making some random build for new talents that just got added, or be grinding for some new weapon that is seemingly stronger than everyone before it. Though, to me, it's not really Deepwoken until the music starts playing, and I'm pulled back into a world where nothing really mattered, when everything was simpler, when everything was easy, when I first discovered Deepwoken.